Basically, as soon as the explosions happened outside the airport in Kabul yesterday, there were justifiable fears that those who do not want to see an end to the US occupation of Afghanistan would use this for one of two things, or both. Calls for us to send more soldiers in, do more strikes in Afghanistan, stay there for the rest of our natural lives, or just use it against Biden, because Biden was responsible for it. And we're seeing a mix of both of those things. So first, here's H.R. McMaster, formerly of the Trump administration, saying that despite the fact that Taliban guards were killed in the attack yesterday, he would not be surprised if ISIS-K was used as a cutout for the Taliban so they could humiliate us on the way out. Look, is that impossible? I don't think that that is impossible. There isn't any evidence that that is the case yet. They are considered to be enemies of each other. He should theoretically know better, but he doesn't want us to leave. And so it's a convenient thing to assert that it was like it's actually secretly the Taliban. By the way, Brett, I saw Tucker Carlson was having a fun little chat with Glenn Greenwald yesterday about Biden intentionally letting these attacks happen so that we're embarrassed on our way out. I don't even know what that point is, but basically you can't have anything that happens without a conspiracy theory. There can't just be a tragic bombing that happens. Someone secretly must have been doing it. Someone secretly was doing it. Apparently ISIS-K, that's what we believe probably happened. Some terrorist set off a bomb, but no, it has to be somebody else secretly that you wouldn't expect.
What is their intention of saying? Why do they say that? Because I don't know. Why does Glenn Greenwald go on that show to do that? Why does Tucker Carlson and Glenn Greenwald on that show?
Glenn Greenwald, to be fair, said he had no idea if that was true, but he did entertain it as well. You know, you have to ask questions like this because nobody trusts the media, and that's the media are responsible for this, so we can't trust them and all that.
But that's it. It's like these precious D-bags. And Glenn Greenwald, okay, fine, that's fine. He didn't participate in it. I don't want to wade into those waters. It wasn't his idea, but he's probably entertained. I wouldn't be surprised if he was entertaining the idea so that he could get asked back on that show again. Like, period. I wouldn't be surprised. And I'm not saying that. I'm just wouldn't be surprised by that. I love this I wouldn't be surprised thing. Everybody's saying it. Jim Sciutto said it. You got this guy who's in front of the Stanford, campus saying that. Like, this guy, every time they say, I wouldn't be surprised. You guys were surprised when Iraq didn't have weapons of mass destruction. I wouldn't be surprised if that was the situation. The problem is, rather than finding ways not to be surprised, you just, carpet bomb the entire airwaves with I wouldn't be surprised BS conspiracy theories or just rampant conjecture so that you cover all your bases. So that at the end, you could come to the same conclusion you were going to come to in the first place, which was we should probably go back. Lindsey Graham, we should take over Bagram again. That's what's so
it's definitely for people like Lindsey Graham, that's what it's used for. Others either don't actually want to continue the occupation or understand that that's not popular, so they're not calling for it, but they still want to get as many points as they can out of this in a variety of different ways. And so I'm gonna go through a few other examples. I don't even know which camps each of these are in, but Johnny Joey Jones on Fox News said, I'll tell you, the war dogs are hungry and it might be time to let them eat. I hate that. It's not woke. As we would say, stack the bodies and let them see it. Yes, he really does seem to hate the idea that we would just go in and kill a bunch of people. And of course, you're having like nonstop calls for Biden to resign. You can see this was on the front page of Fox News, saying his administration is teetering amid calls to resign. What?
They do that.
Implies that he's considering it because soldiers died. Hold on a second, Brett. I know I just got to go through this. So it is devastating that the American soldiers died. It is like devastating that anyone died and far more Afghans died. But let's just bear in mind for a second that while all of those deaths are devastating, we apparently were kind of okay for the most part with the 2,450 who've died in Afghanistan so far. 1,150 soldiers from other countries, 444 humanitarian aid workers, 66,000 members of the Afghan military and national police, 48,000 Afghan civilians. The 60 soldiers that died in Afghanistan during the Trump administration, the far more that have died in Iraq and Syria under the last Republican presidency. They weren't calling for resignations from a terror attack. What did they call for Bush to resign after 9/11? How is that? I don't understand the leap that they're making there. That if a terror group attacks a group of people fleeing a war, that Biden is suddenly responsible for that? Do we believe that they would do that if Trump was still? It's a waste of time to even bring up the possibility. Obviously, they would not.
Trump afterwards then calling it ISIS X, like that's your role boy, and that's the guy. And then HR McMaster, one thing: do you think America needs to be further? If you're the Taliban, what makes more sense to you? That America needs to be, quote, further embarrassed on the way out, so that they could humiliate us on the way out. Humiliate us? What about the part where you say on the way out? They already won the damn war, idiot. They already won. What are we going to get more humiliated by? Or would you rather, if you're ISIS K, now I'm going to say ISIS X, if you're ISIS K, just establish your area, because K in that whole like Khorasan includes most of Afghanistan, which you're vying for and saying that you're in charge of. And then the Taliban, you want them to still be engaged with the Americans. That's what you want, so that you can get more inroads. No one's making those kinds of arguments. Everybody's just saying we should go in there because they want to do that thing where they just create a fog of war so that they can get the defoggers in there that they're going to get paid to send in there. That's it.
Yeah, I just like, if you want to be frustrated by this, please be frustrated by that bombing and every other needless loss of life for more than 2 decades of war. And more importantly than being frustrated, take that into your future thoughts and actions having to do with politics. Let's avoid having anything more like that. Let's actually learn something from this. But the idea that we're gonna, like, they just want a Benghazi. They want to pretend that this one loss of life is significant. Forget all the rest. If you just, if you're just a US soldier and you were walking the streets of Baghdad and you got shot, we don't care about that. A couple of you have to die in one high profile incident, and then we can pretend that we care about it. It's just so disgusting, the disingenuous, like flip-flopping on whether life matters when it's convenient or not.
And Miravina makes a great point. If we could bring up graphic 11 again, saying, I wish we could leave voice messages for DIT. It'd probably be safer. But anyways, I watched the press conference and that picture is misleading. That photo in the graphic where Biden is looking down, the reason he's looking down in that situation is because Peter Doocy asked the question, like, does the buck stop with you? I mean, aren't you personally responsible for all this stuff? And he kept pushing. And this is when Biden's like, I already answered this question, but I'll say it again. What do you want? I already said I was going to get the people who did this, who already claimed credit for the attack. I'm going to get them. So you will have some kind of military action in Afghanistan. Don't get your panties in a twist. But then after that, he has to explain again. The person who was the unprecedented American president to negotiate with the Taliban was Donald Trump. So what do you want? You want it out. We're getting out. More people died during the time after which, and Fox News, you also asked a great question in one of those press conferences. There's a Fox News person who said, so there's no longer an interest for the Americans from a security perspective or a national interest to stay in Afghanistan. What's different about now than 5, 10, 15 years ago? 10 years ago anyways. That was a great question. When did it stop being in our personal interest? And Donald Trump himself said that he acknowledged that he wanted out. He conveniently set a retreat time in May of the next president's term. Isn't that convenient? Yeah. Because he wanted people who have that as their priority to vote for him to get him into that second term so he could then leave. But he never got out. And he just set the groundwork for something like this to happen. How do you, and Biden's like, yes, I know what it's like to lose a family member to the, the long tail of a war. Maybe not in combat, but his son got sick like so many others, as he said, during his deployment in Iraq.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. And it's just everyone is just being so fake.
Let's trust the draft dodger with the bone spurs who's really nervous about ISIS X.
Exactly, yeah. So he's so concerned about that he can't even learn what same is. Anyway, but like we said, the long-term fear is not, is Biden going to resign as a result of this? Did Trump resign when 4 US soldiers died in Niger, I believe it was? And do you remember? This is one of those. He had so many scandals that you don't even remember them. He had to do the thing, like the base level thing a president does, where he calls and talks to the grieving family. And he cared so little about the soldiers, couldn't even remember their names, that it became a scandal when the wife of one of the soldiers talked to Frederica Wilson, I believe it was, and said, like, this made me feel so much worse. He didn't care about any of this. He wasn't interested. And then they feuded. Trump feuded openly with Gold Star families as a result of this. But Biden should resign. Anyway,
he signed up for. He knew what he signed up for.
He knew what he signed up for. Yeah. It's so dismissive of a soldier that died. Anyway, McCarthy is demanding that Pelosi call the House to vote on a bill to halt the Afghan pullout. So not all the Republicans, but some are like, well, I don't think we can leave now. Let's go briefly. I want to go through these quickly. Let's minimize the conversation. But here's Chris Wallace in talking about the potential damage to the presidency, kind of alluding to, can you really afford to leave now?
Bad as yesterday was, the president can come back from that. But if there is an attack from the homeland, on the US homeland from Afghanistan after the withdrawal of all of our troops, that could be curtains for the Biden presidency.
Guess what I heard.
And that was after an extended thing that Chris Wallace was saying about, like, oh, we've really degraded our ability in the region to respond to these attacks. Can we really afford to? What if there's an attack? And then you have just rando Republicans. Let's go briefly to Representative Mark Green. I want you to pay special attention to the language he chooses to use to see the level of seriousness with which we'll have a discussion about the future of Afghanistan.
Straw man for the Taliban, but what do you think the US response to this immediately should be?
I think the president of the United States should come out and say all bets are off. The Taliban have absolutely defied this agreement by not securing. They didn't keep their promise to secure the access routes to the airfield. We are going to expand this operation. I'd put more military in there. I'd get every single American out, and I'd start killing bad guys.
I don't think that saying I'm gonna kill bad guys could be any worse, but somehow he put a particular like spin on it. I'm gonna kill bad guys. That no, this is what they think. It's all a game to them. Some of them don't want to be there. Maybe they've learned a bit in the last 20 years, but so many of them just want to start the thing up again. In the media, elected Republicans, they just want to be there fighting, having other people fight for the rest of our lives. Final thoughts, Brett.
Kevin McCarthy, like 10 minutes ago, was saying we need to stop the budget reconciliation process until we get everybody out of Afghanistan. That's his only priority, is finding like trash to talk. So what we should see is that, and also if it is the case, as it seems to have been and makes logical sense to be, that the ISIS-K did this to keep the Americans engaged with the Taliban so that ISIS-K can expand its territory and influence in the region and beyond. It makes total sense for them to do that so that they can bait these war dogs who are so hungry to eat into staying. Yeah. Period. And also, I just don't understand. Like, if you gave me a logical reason that that the Taliban would be like, yes, please kill our people so that we could keep the Americans here. What? Especially because they're like, all they're trying to do is like keep it together for 5 more days. That's all the Taliban has to do. And then after the Americans are out, they're gonna hunt down Americans in Afghanistan. They have lists of them and like biometric data.
Yeah.
Doing this, it just didn't make sense on the way out for that to happen.
I agree.
Especially when I've seen like the last name of the guy in ISIS-K who they say that they attribute the suicide bombing to. His last, their last names, as they're called, imply where they're from, and his hometown's down the street from Kabul. So it's a huge flex to say, no, ISIS-K is here and we're gonna fight you, Taliban, for control over our, long-term homeland to create a caliphate. Like that's just what it seems like is happening. But at the very least, like, if the answer from all these schmuckos is we just got to go back in and let more of our Americans die as a response to our Americans dying, I just don't get it.
I don't either, but we've heard it our whole lives, and I think that we're hearing it again.
Check out the Damage Report podcast each day, wherever you get your podcasts, whether Pocket Casts or Stitcher or iTunes. You can join me as I give you the news and stories you want, with a range of co-hosts and interview guests jumping in on the fun each day. Again, that's the Damage Report, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you get them at iTunes, don't forget to rate and review. Sometimes I'll read them live on the show.